Happy birthday to me, I whispered, watching through the car window as Chicago's familiar streets blurred past. 72 years on this earth, and here I was, dressed in my favorite blue dress and pearl earrings, gifts from my late husband, Robert, being driven to what my son Michael had promised would be the best birthday lunch ever, Mom. The weight of Robert's watch pressed against my wrist. 5 years since cancer took him. 5 years I'd spent rebuilding myself while hiding the truth from my family. They thought I was just a widow living off Robert's modest insurance money and pension. If only they knew. "You're quiet back there, Eleanor," my daughter-in-law, Jessica, said, her voice syrupy sweet as she turned from the passenger seat. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, not a strand out of place, just like the calculated smile that never quite reached her eyes. "Excited about your surprise?" I'd learned to read people during my 40 years in real estate. Right now, Jessica's tight grip on her designer purse and the quick glance she exchanged with my son screamed that something wasn't right. "Every birthday is a blessing at my age," I replied, keeping my voice deliberately frail, the helpless old lady they expected me to be. "Though I'm curious why we've driven past Luigi's. I thought that was my birthday tradition." Michael cleared his throat, his knuckles whitening around the steering wheel. "Change of plans, Mom. Something better." We turned into an elegant driveway lined with manicured oak trees. My heart froze as I recognized the sign, Silver Haven Retirement Community. Not just any retirement home. My retirement home, the crown jewel of Thompson Properties, the company I'd secretly built after Robert died. "What's this?" I asked, injecting confusion into my voice while my mind raced. Did they know? No, impossible. I'd used shell companies and trusted lawyers. My ownership of this place and 12 other properties across the Midwest was my best-kept secret. "Mom," Michael said as he parked, turning to face me with practiced sympathy. "We've been worried about you. The forgetfulness, the confusion. It's not safe for you to live alone anymore." "What forgetfulness?" I demanded, genuine anger flaring. "I haven't forgotten anything." Jessica reached back to pat my hand. "Last week, you called Michael Robert, Eleanor. And remember when you couldn't find your medication? The one you take every single day."
Lies.
All lies. I'd never called Michael by his father's name. And my misplaced medication had mysteriously reappeared in the guest bathroom after Jessica had visited. "This is ridiculous," I protested as Michael came around to open my door. "Today's my birthday. Take me home." "This is your new home, Mom," Michael said firmly. "We've already moved some of your things. The staff is expecting you." As they led me through the elegant lobby, I noticed everything with an owner's eyes. The fresh flowers I'd insisted on, the comfortable seating areas, the subtle security measures I'd implemented, my creation, my investment, and now, apparently, my prison. "Mrs. Thompson will take good care of you," Michael said as a kind-faced woman in a Navy uniform approached. "She's the administrator." I bit back a laugh. Sarah Thompson reported directly to me via email and secure calls twice monthly. She'd never met me in person, part of my privacy protocol, but she knew my voice. "Welcome to Silver Haven," Sarah said professionally, though I caught the flicker of confusion in her eyes at my family's behavior. "We're delighted to have you join our community." Michael handed over a folder. "Here's all of Mom's information. The doctor's evaluation confirming early-stage dementia is on top." My blood ran cold. "What doctor?" "I'd never been diagnosed with anything," I said firmly. "I need to speak with my lawyer." Jessica's smile tightened. "Eleanor, remember you made Michael your power of attorney last year for your protection." Another lie. "I would never." "We've got to run, Mom," Michael said, checking his watch, the Rolex I'd given him last Christmas. "We'll visit soon." They both hugged me, a performance for Sarah's benefit. As they turned to leave, I heard Jessica whisper, "How long before we can put the house on the market?" Michael replied too quietly for anyone but me to hear. "The lawyer said we can start the paperwork Monday. She'll be much happier here anyway." The doors closed behind them, and I stood frozen in the lobby of my own building, abandoned on my birthday by the son I'd raised and the woman he married. Sarah approached cautiously. Mrs. Thompson, would you like to sit down? You look pale. I straightened my spine. Years of negotiating multi-million-dollar deals stealing my resolve. Miss Thompson, I said quietly, I believe we need to have a private conversation in your office. Immediately. Her eyes widened at my transformed voice. No longer the fragile old woman, but the sharp businesswoman I truly was. You have no idea who I really am, I said, steel in my words. But my son is about to learn that you should never underestimate your mother, especially one who owns the building you just left her in. Sarah Thompson stared at me with wide eyes as we sat in her office. My office, technically. The door closed behind us with a soft click that felt like the turning of a lock on my son's fate. Mrs. Thompson, I don't understand. Please call me Eleanor, I said, removing my reading glasses from my purse. And I believe this will clear things up. I pulled out my phone, the one Michael didn't know about, and opened a secure email app protected by both fingerprint and facial recognition. Technology had always fascinated me, much to my family's amusement. Oh, Mom's trying to use a smartphone again, they'd laugh. If only they knew I'd invested in 3 tech startups last year alone. I turned the screen towards Sarah, showing her the email chain between us from just last week, discussing property improvements and quarterly profits, her name on one end and mine on the other. Eleanor Thompson, CEO, Thompson Properties LLC. You're Elaine Ross, she whispered, using my business pseudonym. In the flesh, I replied. I've owned Silverhaven and 12 other properties for nearly 5 years now. My late husband taught me well, but I built this empire myself. Sarah sank back in her chair. But your son, the dementia diagnosis. Fabricated, I said, anger flaring again. Part of what appears to be a carefully orchestrated plan to seize control of what they think is my modest estate, my house, my savings. They have no idea about any of this. I gestured around us at the elegant retirement community that generated over $2 million in annual profit. Why the secrecy, even from family? Sarah asked. I looked out the window at the garden where residents were enjoying the summer sunshine. Robert always handled our finances. After he died, Michael immediately tried to help with my money. I saw how he and Jessica lived. Always beyond their means, always wanting more. I decided to protect myself by keeping my new ventures private. Sarah nodded slowly. What do you need from me? A smile spread across my face. First, we need to establish that I am absolutely staying here, but not as a patient with dementia, as an undercover owner conducting a quality review. Consider it done. Second, I need access to all security footage showing my arrival today. Michael's little speech about my condition will be evidence against the fraudulent papers he submitted. Sarah was already taking notes. We keep footage for 90 days. I'll secure it immediately. Perfect. And third, I continued, I need a trusted ally, someone who understands what I'm facing and can help me build my case while I remain here. You have the entire staff at your disposal, Mrs. Thompson. Eleanor, she stumbled over what to call me. Eleanor is fine, and I appreciate that, but I need someone specific. A resident named Elizabeth Carter. Sarah raised an eyebrow. The former district attorney? She moved in about 6 months ago. I nodded. We've never met, but I followed her career. A brilliant legal mind who specialized in elder fraud cases before her retirement. I want her as my roommate. Sarah's professional composure cracked slightly. You want to share a room, but you own the premium private suites. Michael and Jessica will be suspicious if I'm given special treatment. I need to appear as just another resident while I gather evidence and plan my counterattack. Before Sarah could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. A young woman in scrubs peeked in. Sorry to interrupt, Miss Thompson, but Mr. Thompson is calling. He wants to know if his mother has settled in, and if she's still asking to leave. My jaw tightened. Not even 30 minutes, and he was already checking to make sure his plan was working. Tell him, I said before Sarah could answer, that his mother is quite tired from the emotional day and is resting comfortably. She seems confused but accepting of her new circumstances. After the nurse left, Sarah looked at me with newfound respect. You're going to fight back. With everything I have, I confirmed. Michael and Jessica picked the wrong woman to underestimate. By the time I'm done, they'll wish they'd simply taken me to lunch at Luigi's. I stood up, straightening my pearl necklace. Now, shall we tour my facility? I'd like to meet my new roommate and begin planning how to teach my son that some lessons come too late in life to forget. As we walked through the hallways, residents and staff greeted Sarah warmly. I observed everything with new eyes, no longer just the owner concerned about property values and profit margins, but as someone whose life might depend on the quality of care here. You know, I said quietly as we approached the East Wing, when I bought this place, it was just business, another investment. I never imagined I'd end up living here myself. Sarah matched my pace. And now, I paused, watching an elderly gentleman carefully tend to orchids in the solarium, his gnarled hands moving with surprising grace. Now, I think perhaps it was fate. This place needs me as much as I need it right now, and together we're going to make sure justice is served. I smiled at an approaching resident, a sharp-eyed woman with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. Elizabeth Carter, if my research was correct, my new roommate, my new ally. Wait, I said, touching Sarah's arm. Before we meet everyone, I'd like you to do something for me. If you truly believe in what I'm saying, anything. I need you to pause right now and tell anyone watching this that if they're enjoying my story, they should subscribe to this channel for the next chapters. There are more shocking revelations coming that they won't want to miss. I smiled with determination. Now, let me introduce myself to the woman who's going to help me reclaim everything that's mine and teach my son the most expensive lesson of his life. Eleanor Thompson, I said, extending my hand to Elizabeth Carter. Her grip was firm, her gaze appraising. I believe we're going to be roommates. Former District Attorney Carter, she replied, a hint of amusement in her voice. Though these days everyone just calls me Elizabeth, or that nosy old lady who asks too many questions. I liked her immediately. Sarah excused herself to handle the paperwork for our arrangement, leaving Elizabeth and me sitting in the sunlit common area. Around us, residents played cards, read books, or simply dozed in comfortable chairs. It all seemed so peaceful, a perfect facade hiding the betrayal that had brought me here. So, Elizabeth said, stirring her tea, Sarah mentioned you requested me specifically as a roommate. Rather unusual for a new arrival who's supposedly suffering from dementia. My eyebrows shot up. She told you. Not everything, just enough to pique my interest. Elizabeth leaned forward. 30 years prosecuting elder abuse cases teaches you to recognize when something doesn't add up. Your son deposits you here on your birthday with suspicious paperwork, and suddenly our administrator is treating you like you're the Queen of England. Her eyes twinkled. I'm intrigued. I glanced around, then lowered my voice. What I'm about to tell you must remain between us. For the next 10 minutes, I laid out the bare facts of my situation. My secret ownership of the facility, Michael's betrayal, the falsified medical documents. Elizabeth listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly outraged. The sheer audacity, she finally said, shaking her head. Your own son. Money changes people, I replied, the words bitter on my tongue. Or perhaps it simply reveals who they truly are. Elizabeth studied me. You don't seem particularly surprised by his behavior. Hurt, yes, but not shocked. Her perception was unsettling. I looked down at my hands, still steady despite everything. Michael was always ambitious. When Robert was alive, he kept Michael in check. After the funeral, things changed. Michael started visiting more often, asking about finances, suggesting I sell the house because it must hold so many painful memories. And your daughter-in-law, Jessica? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. She married Michael for his potential, not for who he was. I saw it from the beginning, the way she pushed him to demand more from his father's company, to stretch beyond our means. Robert gave them the down payment for their house as a wedding gift. 6 months later, they were asking for money to renovate. A flash of memory hit me. Michael, as a little boy, sitting on Robert's lap as they built model airplanes together, his infectious laugh when Robert would pretend the planes were swooping down to tickle him. When had that sweet child become this man who could abandon his mother on her birthday? Eleanor. Elizabeth's voice pulled me back. I'm sorry, I said, blinking away the unexpected moisture in my eyes. It's been a day. Indeed, it has. And now you need a plan. Elizabeth's prosecutorial instinct was evident in her direct approach. What evidence do we have of the fraud? The security footage from today, the falsified medical records. I've never even seen this doctor, who supposedly diagnosed me. And I have documentation proving Michael does not have power of attorney. Elizabeth nodded. Good start, but we need more. Communications between Michael and Jessica discussing their plans would be ideal, and we need to establish your mental competency beyond any doubt. I've already contacted my attorney, I said. He'll be arranging for an independent evaluation. Smart move. Elizabeth looked impressed. Most people in your situation would be too distraught to think so clearly. I smiled grimly. I didn't build a real estate empire by falling apart in a crisis. Our conversation was interrupted by a staff member announcing afternoon activities. As residents began moving toward the recreation room, Elizabeth stood. Come on, roomie. Let's get you settled in. We can continue our strategy session in private. The room we shared was modest but pleasant. 2 twin beds with floral comforters, nightstands, a shared dresser, and a small sitting area near the window overlooking the garden. My suitcase, packed by Michael and Jessica, sat at the foot of one bed. As I unpacked, I discovered they'd included mostly nightgowns, slippers, and casual clothes. No business attire, nothing that would present me as a competent, independent woman. The message was clear. They were already seeing me as the diminished, dependent mother they wanted me to be. They even took my jewelry, I muttered, finding only my everyday pieces. The valuable items, my diamond tennis bracelet, Robert's mother's emerald ring, were conspicuously absent. Document everything, Elizabeth advised, handing me a notepad from her desk. Every missing item, every conversation. Build your case methodically. As I wrote, Elizabeth settled into her chair by the window. You know, in all my years prosecuting these cases, I've seen countless children try to take advantage of their parents. But rarely have I seen someone as prepared to fight back as you are. I paused my writing. I'm not just fighting for myself. This is about principle. No one should be able to discard a parent like yesterday's trash just because they've reached a certain age. Amen to that, Elizabeth agreed. Now, tell me more about this son of yours. What makes him tick? What are his vulnerabilities? I spent the next hour detailing Michael's character, his insecurities, his desperate need for status, his genuine intelligence undermined by impatience and entitlement. He wasn't always like this, I finished quietly. There was a time when he was kind, thoughtful. I keep wondering where I went wrong. Elizabeth reached across and patted my hand. We all wonder that about our children sometimes, but their choices are their own. Eleanor, your job now is to protect yourself. As evening approached, a nurse came to check on us, reminding me that I had a phone call scheduled with Michael at 7 p.m. He wants to see how you're settling in, she explained. After she left, Elizabeth and I exchanged glances. Remember, Elizabeth said, you're playing a role now, confused but compliant.
Can you do that?
I nodded, steel returning to my spine. I've negotiated with sharks in boardrooms across the Midwest. I can certainly handle a phone call with my son. Good, because every conversation is an opportunity to gather intelligence. As I prepared for the call, I looked out at the fading daylight and thought about all the people watching my story unfold. You know, I said to Elizabeth, I'd love to know where all of you are watching from and how old you are. If you're enjoying this journey so far, please leave a comment below with your age and location and hit that like button. Your support means everything as I fight to reclaim my dignity. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow at my unexpected address, but I just smiled. Sometimes, when you're planning a strategic victory, you need all the allies you can get. The phone felt cold against my ear as I listened to Michael's voice, so concerned, so caring, a performance worthy of Broadway. How are you feeling, Mom? Getting settled in okay? He asked. I suppose so, Michael, I said, letting my voice trail off, adding a slight tremble for effect. It's all a bit confusing. This morning I was in my home, and now, Elizabeth gave me an approving nod from across the room, where she pretended to read while eavesdropping shamelessly. I know it's an adjustment, Mom, but it's for the best. The doctor was very clear about your condition. Michael continued smoothly. Jessica and I are just getting your house ready for the market. Property values in your neighborhood are at an all-time high. My blood boiled. Not even 24 hours, and they were already preparing to sell my home, the beautiful colonial that Robert and I had lovingly restored over decades, where Michael had grown up. My house. I injected confusion into my voice. But where will I live when I come home? An uncomfortable pause. Mom, Silver Haven is your home now. Remember we talked about this. It's the best place for someone with your challenges. But my things, my memories, I pressed, wanting to see how far he'd go. We're keeping all the important stuff, he assured me quickly. Family photos, keepsakes. The rest, well, you know how you always said you wanted to downsize eventually. I closed my eyes, imagining the vultures picking through my belongings, deciding what was important enough to save. Jessica had always coveted my antique silver tea service. No doubt it would find its way to her dining room before the week was out. Michael, I said, dropping my voice to a near whisper. Where's my jewelry box? The one with Grandma Thompson's emerald ring. I can't find it. Another pause, longer this time. It's safe, Mom. We're keeping all your valuables in our safe deposit box. You wouldn't want to lose something precious at the facility, right? Theft, pure and simple. I looked at Elizabeth, who was scribbling furiously in her notepad. I suppose that makes sense. I conceded, playing along. Will you bring it when you visit? I'd like to see it. Sure, Mom, he said quickly, too quickly. Hey, listen, I've got to run. Jessica and I are meeting with the real estate agent for dinner. You get some rest, okay? We'll visit this weekend. After saying goodbye, I placed the phone down with deliberate care, though what I really wanted was to hurl it across the room. Well, Elizabeth said, setting aside her notepad, if we needed proof of intent, that conversation provided plenty. I moved to the window, watching as the last light of day faded from the gardens below. He's already selling my house, taking my jewelry. He didn't even ask if I needed anything. That call was recorded through the facility system, Elizabeth reminded me. Another piece of evidence. It's not enough, I said, turning back to face her. I need to see what they're doing at the house, what they're taking. Elizabeth raised an eyebrow. You have someone who can help with that? A smile tugged at my lips. As a matter of fact, I do. The next morning, after a surprisingly decent breakfast in the dining hall, I excused myself to make a private call from the facility's phone booth, a quaint feature I'd insisted on when renovating the place, knowing many residents preferred traditional handsets to cell phones. Ramirez Security answered a crisp, professional voice. This is Eleanor Thompson, I said, lowering my voice. I need to speak with Juan immediately. Within moments, Juan Ramirez was on the line, my head of security for all properties in the Thompson portfolio, and a man who owed his business success partly to my early investment. Mrs. Thompson, he said warmly, what can I do for you? Quickly, I explained my situation. Juan's reaction moved from shock to outrage to determined resolve. So, you need surveillance on your home? Consider it done. I'll have my best people there within the hour. We'll document everything they remove and access the security system you already have installed. The security system that Michael had no idea about. Cameras I'd had discreetly installed after noticing small items going missing during Jessica's visits. Thank you, Juan. And one more thing, I need a secure phone. Can you have one delivered here? Something that can't be traced back to you or me. I'll have Maria bring it personally. She can pose as your niece visiting. After finishing the call, I returned to find Elizabeth chatting with a distinguished-looking gentleman in the common area. She waved me over. Eleanor, meet Judge William Rogers. William, this is my new roommate, Eleanor Thompson. The elderly man stood, revealing an impressive height despite a slight stoop. He took my hand with old-world courtesy. A pleasure, Mrs. Thompson. Elizabeth was just telling me you're new to our little community. Intentionally so, Elizabeth added with meaningful emphasis. Understanding flickered in the judge's eyes. One of those situations. I was on the bench for 40 years, he explained. Family court, among other assignments. I've seen plenty of adult children suddenly discovering their parents were incompetent right after inheriting money or property. And now you're here, I observed. A shadow crossed his face. My daughter thought it best after my wife passed. She lives in Oregon, busy career. This was convenient for her. His tone suggested there was more to the story, but he quickly brightened. However, I found unexpected purpose here, informal legal advice for residents facing challenges with their families or finances. Judge Rogers, William, might be another valuable ally, Elizabeth suggested. By mid-afternoon, I'd been introduced to several more residents with relevant backgrounds, a retired banker, a former social worker specializing in elder care, and a woman who'd spent 30 years as a private investigator. Silver Haven, it seemed, was filled with sharp minds and sharper instincts. Your own personal senior citizen Ocean's 11, Elizabeth joked as we walked the grounds later, all with axes to grind against family members who underestimated them. I laughed, my first genuine laugh since arriving. I never expected to find such resources here. That's the thing about places like this, Elizabeth said, gesturing around us. Society puts us out to pasture, assuming we're finished contributing. They forget that wisdom and experience don't diminish with age. As promised, Juan's employee, Maria, arrived that afternoon, playing the part of my concerned niece perfectly. Between hugs, she slipped me a smartphone in a discreet case that looked like an old-fashioned address book. That evening, I received my first report from Juan. Michael and Jessica had spent hours at my house with a real estate agent. They'd already begun boxing up smaller items, and Jessica had been photographed wearing my diamond tennis bracelet as she directed movers toward my antique secretary desk, a family heirloom worth thousands. I showed the photos to Elizabeth, my hands shaking with rage. Document everything, she reminded me. Remember, we're playing the long game here. I nodded, taking a deep breath. You're right. They think they have all the time in the world to dismantle my life. That's their weakness. Overconfidence. As I prepared for bed that first night away from home, I found myself addressing imaginary observers again. If you're following my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from and how old you are. Please comment below and like this video if you're supporting me through this journey. Elizabeth gave me an odd look. You've done that twice now, spoken to invisible people. Should I be concerned about your mental state after all? I laughed and shook my head. Just a quirk I've developed in my old age. Sometimes I imagine my life as a story being told to others who might learn from it. Well, Elizabeth said, climbing into her bed, if people are watching, I hope they're taking notes because what we're about to do will be a masterclass in justice served cold. I smiled at her words, feeling for the first time since my birthday that perhaps this betrayal might become something more, a lesson not just for Michael, but for anyone who thought age equaled vulnerability. The game was just beginning. A week passed at Silver Haven, each day a careful balance of playing the confused elderly mother while secretly building my case. Michael visited twice, brief, perfunctory appearances where he patted my hand, spoke to me in that loud, slow voice people reserve for those they consider mentally diminished, and deflected all my questions about the house. Don't worry about any of that, Mom, he'd say, checking his watch every few minutes. Jessica and I have everything under control. I'm sure you do, I thought, nodding docilely while my mind catalogued every condescending word for future reference. On his second visit, he brought Emily, my 17-year-old granddaughter. Unlike her parents, Emily's distress seemed genuine as she hugged me tightly. Grandma, I don't understand why you're here, she whispered when Michael stepped out to take a call. You seemed fine at Easter. I squeezed her hand, wondering how much to reveal. Emily had always been different from her parents, more compassionate, less materialistic. While Michael and Jessica pushed her toward business school and corporate internships, Emily volunteered at animal shelters and talked about studying environmental science. Things aren't always what they seem, sweetheart, I said carefully. How are things at home? Emily glanced toward the door. Weird. Mom's been wearing your jewelry, said you wanted her to have it. And they've been moving furniture out of your house. Dad said it's being staged for sale, but she hesitated. But what? I prompted. I heard them arguing last night. Mom wants to use some of the money from your house for a vacation home in Arizona. Dad thinks they should invest it. They're already spending it, Grandma, like I'm already gone. I finished for her. Tears welled in her eyes. I told them it wasn't right. Dad said I don't understand adult responsibilities, and Mom said you're being taken care of better here anyway. She looked around the common room with its institutional furniture and bland artwork. But this isn't your home. I took a risk. Emily, if I needed your help with something important, something secret, could I trust you? Her eyes widened, curiosity replacing sadness. Of course, Grandma. Anything. When you visit next time, bring my old photo album, the blue one from the shelf in my study. Tell your father you want it for a school project about family history. The blue album, she repeated. But why, Emily? Michael's voice cut through our conversation as he returned, phone in hand. We need to go. Your mother needs us at the house. The realtor is coming for final measurements. Emily squeezed my hand one last time before standing. I'll bring it next time, Grandma. I promise. After they left, I found Elizabeth waiting in our room, eager for an update. I think I have another ally, I told her with cautious optimism. My granddaughter Emily seems troubled by what her parents are doing. Be careful, Elizabeth warned. Family loyalties are complicated. Children often side with their parents even when they have doubts. Emily's different, I insisted. She has Robert's moral compass. What's in the blue album? Elizabeth asked, always quick to catch important details. I smiled. Nothing sentimental. It's where I kept hard copies of my most important documents, including the real power of attorney I granted to my attorney, Richard Bennett, not to Michael, and photos of the jewelry collection with insurance documentation showing value. If they've sold any pieces, that's grand theft. Elizabeth looked impressed. You really did prepare for this possibility. Not specifically this, I admitted, but after 40 years in real estate, I learned to keep ironclad documentation of everything valuable. I sighed, suddenly feeling the weight of the deception surrounding me. I just never imagined I'd need to use it against my own son. That evening, I joined a bridge game with Elizabeth, Judge Rogers, and Helen Goldstein, the retired private investigator. As we played, I noticed how their conversations subtly extracted information from me, my background, my family situation, my mental acuity, while sharing relevant experiences from their own lives. It's not uncommon, you know, Helen said as she dealt the cards. I worked a case once where 3 siblings conspired to have their mother declared incompetent. She'd won the lottery for $1 million. What happened? I asked. A wolfish grin spread across Helen's face. Let's just say that by the time I finished my investigation, those kids were lucky their mother didn't press charges. She used some of her winnings to move to Scottsdale, sends them Christmas cards from her desert villa every year. Judge Rogers chuckled. The courts are finally starting to take elder fraud seriously. 20 years ago, cases like yours were dismissed as family matters. Now, prosecutors have specialized units. Speaking of which, Elizabeth interjected, I made a call to an old colleague in the DA's office. Strictly hypothetical, of course. The fraudulent medical diagnosis alone could mean serious consequences for Michael. I laid down my cards. I don't want my son to go to jail, I said quietly. I want justice, not vengeance. Judge Rogers studied me with kind eyes. Eleanor, in my experience, people who commit these kinds of acts rarely stop at one victim. If your son faces no consequences, what's to prevent him from doing the same to someone else's mother, someone without your resources or preparation? His words struck home. This wasn't just about me anymore. Later that night, my secure phone buzzed with a message from Juan. He'd sent photos from my home security system, Michael and Jessica in my study, rifling through my desk drawers, Jessica trying on my pearl necklace, the one Robert had given me on our 30th anniversary, preening before the mirror while Michael searched through file cabinets. I zoomed in on one image, Michael holding what appeared to be my financial documents, his expression triumphant. The next photo showed his face transforming to confusion, then alarm, as he apparently realized the statement showed only modest savings and investments, nothing like the wealth he was expecting. They can't find evidence of my real assets, I told Elizabeth, showing her the photos. Everything significant is under my business entities. He looks worried, Elizabeth observed. Financial pressure? Possibly. Michael's always lived beyond his means. I know they remortgaged their house last year to pay for renovations. A plan began forming in my mind, a way to apply pressure that might reveal even more of their intentions. The next morning, I asked Sarah to arrange a meeting with the facility's visiting financial advisor under the guise of reviewing my limited personal accounts. Instead, I used the meeting to make a call to the real estate agent handling my home, using my Eleanor Thompson voice, not my confused elderly lady persona. This is Eleanor Thompson. I understand you're working with my son to sell my property. The agent sounded startled. Mrs. Thompson, yes. Michael said you were indisposed. A temporary situation. I replied smoothly. I'm calling to inform you that the property is not for sale. My son does not have authority to list it. But he showed me power of attorney documents. Fraudulent ones, I interrupted. My attorney will be contacting you formally, but I wanted to give you the professional courtesy of advance notice. Anyone involved in this fraudulent sale could face legal consequences. After ending the call, I sent a text to Juan. Phase 1 initiated. By that afternoon, the storm began. My secure phone rang. Michael, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Mom, the real estate agent just called me. She said you told her the house isn't for sale. What's going on? I pitched my voice high, confused. Michael, is that you? Where are you calling from? This isn't the facility phone. A pause. What? No, Mom, this is your home number. Did someone give you a cell phone? A cell phone? I don't understand all that technology. You know that, I said, laying it on thick. A nice lady let me use her phone to call about my house. I was confused why strangers were coming through it. Mom. His voice strained with forced patience. We talked about this. You're living at Silver Haven now. The house is too much for you to maintain. But it's my house, I said, a quaver in my voice. Robert and I bought it. I don't want to sell it. It's for the best, Mom. Listen, I've got to go. We'll talk about this when I visit tomorrow. After he hung up, I turned to Elizabeth, who had been listening on speakerphone. He's coming tomorrow, earlier than planned. Good, she said with a satisfied nod. He's rattled. People make mistakes when they're rattled. The next day, Michael arrived alone, his normally impeccable appearance slightly disheveled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he kept checking his phone nervously. Mom, he began without preamble. We need to talk about the house. I blinked innocently. Which house, dear? He ran a hand through his hair. Your house, Mom. Our family home. You called the real estate agent yesterday. Did I? I tilted my head. I'm sorry. I get confused sometimes. That's why I'm here, right? Because I get confused. Michael squirmed visibly. Yes, but look, the house sale is important. We need to use that money for your care here. But I thought Medicare and my pension covered that, I said, deliberately bringing up financial matters I'd previously seemed too confused to discuss. Well, yes, partially. But he stopped frowning. Who have you been talking to about this? I widened my eyes. The nice people here. We play cards and talk. Is that wrong? Michael leaned closer, lowering his voice. Mom, you need to stop interfering with the house sale. You're not thinking clearly. Remember what the doctor said. Which doctor? I asked. I'd like to speak with this doctor. What was his name again? For a moment, panic flashed across Michael's face before he composed himself. Dr. Reynolds. We've discussed this, Mom, several times. I don't remember any Dr. Reynolds, I insisted. Could you arrange for him to visit me here? I have questions about my condition. He's very busy, Michael said quickly. But I'll see what I can do. By the time he left, Michael was visibly agitated, making a phone call the moment he stepped into the hallway. Through the partially open door, I heard snippets. She's asking questions. No, I don't think she suspects anything. We need to move faster. Elizabeth, who had been pretending to nap during our conversation, opened one eye. You certainly know how to push his buttons. I learned from the best, I replied, thinking of Robert and his negotiation tactics. Always let the other party reveal their weaknesses. That evening, as we finished dinner in the dining hall, one sent another update. Michael and Jessica had been arguing heatedly in their car outside my house. Later, Jessica had called a local jewelry appraiser about inherited pieces she wanted to sell. They're getting desperate, Elizabeth observed. Selling your jewelry, pushing to close the house sale quickly. They must need the money urgently. And now they're worried I might be a problem, I added. Which means they might take more drastic measures. Like what? I thought for a moment. They could try to have me transferred to a facility with less autonomy, or increase the medication they claim I need. Elizabeth nodded gravely. We need to accelerate our timeline. The longer this goes on, the more risk to you. You're right, I agreed. It's time for our next move. I turned as if addressing an audience. For those of you who have been following my journey and supporting me, I want to thank you. Please make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. If you've ever dealt with family betrayal, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Elizabeth remarked, for someone supposedly suffering from dementia, you have an unusual habit of addressing imaginary audiences. I smiled enigmatically. Perhaps I'd just like to believe that our stories matter beyond the moment we live them. Poetic, she conceded. Now, let's go plan how to trap your son in his own deception. The blue photo album felt heavy in my hands when Emily delivered it 3 days later. She'd come alone, using her weekend job at the local coffee shop as an excuse to visit without her parents. They didn't even question it, she told me as we sat in a quiet corner of the garden. Dad's been distracted, arguing with Mom about money. And yesterday, some man called about jewelry Mom was trying to sell, something about provenance and insurance documentation. I hid my smile. Juan's associate at the jewelry appraisal shop had done exactly as instructed. Emily, I said, keeping my voice low, what I'm about to tell you might be difficult to hear, but I need you to know the truth. Over the next half hour, I explained everything. Not the confused grandmother Michael portrayed me as, but the sharp businesswoman who had built an empire in secret. I showed her documentation from the album proving my ownership of Silver Haven and other properties. I told her about the falsified medical diagnosis, the fraudulent power of attorney, the theft of my jewelry. Emily's expression shifted from shock to disbelief to anger. They lied to me, she whispered. They said you needed specialized care, that you couldn't recognize family members sometimes. Her eyes filled with tears. Dad looked me in the eye and said it was what you wanted. I squeezed her hand. People can justify almost anything when money is involved. What are you going to do? She asked. Expose the truth, I replied. But I need to be careful. If they realize I'm building a case, they might take more drastic measures. Emily straightened her shoulders, so like Robert when he'd made an important decision. I want to help. I studied my granddaughter's face, weighing the risks against the benefits of involving her. It could put you in a difficult position with your parents. They put themselves in a difficult position when they lied to me, she said firmly. Besides, Grandpa always said, doing the right thing isn't supposed to be easy. Pride swelled in my chest. Your grandfather would be so proud of you right now. We spent the next hour going through my plan. Emily would be my eyes and ears in the house, documenting what items were being removed and eavesdropping on conversations about finances. She'd also search for the fraudulent medical records and power of attorney documents Michael had used. I know where Dad keeps important papers, she assured me. He thinks his home office safe is secure, but I figured out the combination years ago. Christmas and his birthday. Not exactly creative. As she prepared to leave, Emily hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, Grandma. I should have questioned things earlier. You're questioning them now, I said. That's what matters. After Emily left, I joined Elizabeth, Judge Rogers, and Helen in Elizabeth's carefully orchestrated therapy group, our cover for strategy meetings. Today, We were joined by Dr. Anika Patel, the facility's medical director, whom Sarah had cautiously brought into our confidence after thorough vetting. "I've reviewed the supposed medical documentation," Dr. Patel said, her expression grim. "It's concerning on multiple levels. The neurological assessment allegedly performed by this Dr. Reynolds doesn't follow standard protocols, and some of the symptoms described are inconsistent with any form of dementia I've encountered in 30 years of practice." "Can you perform your own assessment?" Elizabeth asked. "Something official we can use to counter these fraudulent claims." Dr. Patel nodded. "I've already scheduled Mrs. Thompson for a complete cognitive evaluation with an independent neurologist who specializes in geriatric care. He's a respected expert witness in competency cases." "Perfect," Judge Rogers said. "Medical evidence will be crucial when we move to invalidate the fraudulent power of attorney." Helen, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. "My contact at the bank confirmed that Michael attempted to access Eleanor's safe deposit box yesterday. He presented the power of attorney, but the manager remembered Eleanor's explicit instructions that no one but her was permitted access, regardless of documentation. They turned him away." I nodded, grateful for the precautions I'd put in place years ago. "He's getting desperate. The house sale is stalled. He can't access my accounts or safe deposit box. Thought would bring quick cash is proving difficult to sell without proper documentation." "Which brings us to the next phase," Elizabeth said, spreading out a calendar. "Thanksgiving is 2 weeks away. Eleanor believes that would be the ideal time to spring our trap." "A family holiday," Judge Rogers mused. "Symbolic." "More than symbolic," I explained. "Michael and Jessica always host Thanksgiving, family, friends, business associates. It's their annual showcase of success. This year, Michael told me they're having 30 guests, including his boss and several potential clients." "The perfect audience," Helen said with a knowing smile. "Exactly," I confirmed. "Michael values his reputation above almost everything. Being exposed as someone who abandoned his mother and falsified medical documents to seize her assets in front of his professional network would devastate him." "But how do we get you there?" Dr. Patel asked. "You're supposedly too cognitively impaired to leave the facility." I smiled. "That's where you come in, doctor. I'll need your help arranging a therapeutic day pass for family Thanksgiving, something about familiar surroundings potentially benefiting patients with memory issues." "Plausible," Dr. Patel agreed. "I can document it as part of your treatment plan." "And I'll drive her," Elizabeth volunteered as her support person from the facility. We spent the next hour refining the details. By the time our therapy session ended, we had a comprehensive plan in place. That evening, as expected, Michael called, his voice tense, controlled. "Mom, how are you doing today?" I gave my now practiced, confused response, asking about his day and then appearing to forget his answer moments later. Then I introduced the idea Sarah had coached me on. "Michael, dear, when is Thanksgiving? The nice doctor here said something about me visiting family." There was a pause. "Thanksgiving? That's in 2 weeks, Mom." "Oh, will I be home by then?" I injected innocent hope into my voice. Another pause, longer this time. "Mom, Silver Haven is your home now. Remember? We've talked about this." "But holidays are for family," I persisted. The nice lady doctor here, said I could visit for Thanksgiving. She called it a therapeutic pass for familiar surroundings." "Did she?" Michael's tone sharpened. "I should speak with her about that." "I'm not sure it's a good idea, Mom. Our house will be full of guests. It might be overwhelming for you." "Oh," I said, allowing my voice to quaver with disappointment. "I understand. I'll just stay here alone on Thanksgiving then." The emotional manipulation was deliberate and effective. "No, Mom, that's not," he sighed heavily. "Let me talk to Jessica and call you back." After hanging up, I exchanged a satisfied nod with Elizabeth. "He'll agree," I predicted. "He won't risk looking like the son who abandoned his mother on Thanksgiving." Sure enough, Michael called back an hour later, his voice artificially bright. "Good news, Mom. We figured it out. You can come for Thanksgiving dinner. The facility can arrange transportation, right?" "I think my friend Elizabeth might drive me," I said. She's alone for Thanksgiving, too. Elizabeth, my roommate. She's very nice. Used to be a lawyer. No, that's not right. Anyway, she's helping me remember things. Michael's voice grew cautious. Mom, are you making friends with the other residents? They're very smart here, I said cheerfully. We play cards and talk about our children. Another pause. What? What do you talk about? Oh, the usual. How often they visit, how they handle our finances. I deliberately let that hang in the air. Mom, I'm doing everything I can to take care of your finances properly, Michael said stiffly. That's why we're selling the house, to ensure you have the best care. Of course, dear, I said soothingly. I'm sure you know best. Oh, Elizabeth is calling me for bingo. I need to go. I hung up before he could respond, then turned to Elizabeth with a grim smile. He's worried now, wondering what I might have told others, what I might remember and say during Thanksgiving dinner. Good, Elizabeth said. An anxious opponent makes mistakes. Over the next week, Emily provided regular updates. Michael had been making frantic calls to the real estate agent, pushing to close the house sale before Thanksgiving. He'd also contacted several lawyers, presumably seeking advice about challenging the bank's refusal to grant him access to my safe deposit box. Most disturbing was what Emily overheard one night: Michael and Jessica discussing the possibility of having me transferred to a different facility, one with a more structured environment and appropriate medication protocols. They're talking about sedating you, Grandma, Emily said during her next visit, her voice shaking with anger, making sure you're too drugged to question anything. My blood ran cold, but I kept my expression calm for Emily's sake. That won't happen, I assured her. Our plan is almost ready. On my secure phone that evening, I messaged my attorney, Richard Bennett. Accelerate timeline. Potential transfer risk. Richard responded immediately. All documents prepared. Court date set for Monday, after Thanksgiving. Judge Kaufman's presiding. I showed Elizabeth the exchange. We need to survive Thanksgiving dinner. Then the legal process begins. Are you nervous? She asked. I considered the question carefully. Not about exposing Michael. That needs to happen. I'm nervous about facing the reality that my son, my only child, was willing to discard me for money. Elizabeth squeezed my hand. Family can hurt us like no one else.
But family isn't always about blood.
Sometimes it's about who stands by you when it matters. I thought about Elizabeth, Judge Rogers, Helen, Dr. Patel, Sarah, Juan, and Emily, my unexpected alliance of supporters. Perhaps Elizabeth was right. Family took many forms. The day before Thanksgiving, Dr. Patel brought me the results of my neurological evaluation. Perfect scores across all cognitive assessments, she reported with satisfaction. The neurologist's report explicitly states there is no evidence of dementia or cognitive impairment of any kind. In fact, he noted your exceptional mental acuity for any age. I accepted the official report with a smile. One more piece of our puzzle. That night, I found myself addressing my invisible audience again. If you've been following my journey, please make sure you're subscribed and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and I'll finally confront the son who abandoned me in my own building. Your support means everything as I prepare for the most difficult conversation of my life. Elizabeth, packing a small overnight bag for our Thanksgiving adventure, shook her head fondly. There you go again, talking to your imaginary viewers. Maybe we should have checked you for other conditions besides dementia. I laughed, the sound dispelling some of my tension. Maybe I'm just rehearsing for tomorrow's performance. One last time playing the confused mother before the grand revelation. Are you ready? Elizabeth asked, suddenly serious. I thought about Michael, the little boy who once made me Mother's Day cards with glitter that got everywhere, the teenager who drove me crazy with his loud music, the young man who had made me so proud at his college graduation. Somewhere along the way, I'd lost that son to greed and entitlement. Yes, I said firmly. I'm ready to reclaim my life and my dignity, and perhaps, in the long run, help my son reclaim his conscience. As I laid out my outfit for tomorrow, an elegant blue dress I'd had Emily smuggle from my closet, not the shapeless cardigans Michael and Jessica had packed for me, I felt a strange sense of
Calm.
Tomorrow would change everything. For better or worse, the trap was set, and this time, the vulnerable old lady would be the one springing it. Thanksgiving Day dawned crisp and clear, sunlight streaming through autumn leaves as Elizabeth drove us toward Michael's suburban home. I sat in the passenger seat, dressed in my blue silk dress and pearl necklace, not the real ones Jessica had taken, but a convincing replica one had provided. Nervous? Elizabeth asked, glancing at me as we turned onto Oak Street, where large colonial homes sat behind manicured lawns. Strangely calm, I replied, smoothing my silver hair, which I'd styled carefully instead of leaving it in the messy bun Michael was now accustomed to seeing. I feel like I've been preparing for this moment my entire life. In my purse rested a slim portfolio containing everything I needed: the neurologist's report, documentation of my ownership of Silver Haven and other properties, evidence of the falsified power of attorney, and photographs of Jessica wearing my jewelry. Richard Bennett would arrive separately, timed to coincide with dinner. As we pulled into Michael's circular driveway, I noted the luxury cars already parked there: Mercedes, BMWs, Lexuses, belonging to the colleagues and clients Michael was so eager to impress. The house itself, a 4-bedroom colonial Michael and Jessica had stretched their finances to afford, was decorated with tasteful Thanksgiving wreaths and potted chrysanthemums. "Remember," Elizabeth said as she turned off the engine, "stick to the plan. Play confused until everyone's present." I nodded, then reached over to squeeze her hand. "Thank you for everything." "Just doing my job as your roommate," she replied with a wink. "Besides, I haven't had this much fun since I prosecuted that embezzling city councilman in '98. Michael opened the front door before we could ring the bell, his smile tight and his eyes darting nervously between me and Elizabeth. "Mom, happy Thanksgiving." He hugged me stiffly, then extended his hand to Elizabeth. "And you must be Elizabeth, was it? Mom's mentioned you." "Elizabeth Carter," she replied, shaking his hand firmly. "Your mother has told me so much about you, Michael." Something in her tone made him pause, a flicker of unease crossing his face before he recovered. "All good things, I hope. Please come in. Everyone's in the living room having appetizers." The house was warm, filled with the aroma of roasting turkey and the murmur of conversation. As we entered the spacious living room, heads turned to observe us. I recognized several of Michael's colleagues, some neighbors, and, at the center of it all, Jessica, resplendent in a designer dress, directing a caterer where to place a tray of hors d'oeuvres. When she spotted me, her smile faltered momentarily before she rushed over. "Eleanor, how wonderful you could join us." She air-kissed my cheek, then whispered to Michael, "You didn't tell me she'd be so put together today." The facility must have helped her dress. He muttered back, not realizing how clearly I could hear him, "Yeah, they must have." Emily appeared from the kitchen, her face lighting up when she saw me. She embraced me warmly, whispering, "Everything's ready, Grandma," before turning to introduce herself to Elizabeth. For the next hour, I played my role perfectly, the slightly confused elderly mother, occasionally asking the same question twice or misidentifying a guest. Michael hovered anxiously, jumping in to explain away my confusion and steering conversations away from anything substantive. "Mom's having one of her good days," he told his boss, a silver-haired man named Stephen. "But the doctors say that's common with her condition," moments of clarity mixed with confusion. "How fortunate you found such a nice facility for her," Stephen commented. "We only want the best for her," Jessica chimed in, absently touching the diamond tennis bracelet on her wrist, my bracelet. I pretended not to notice, but Elizabeth's sharp eyes caught the gesture, and she gave me a subtle nod. As dinner approached, the doorbell rang. Michael frowned, checking his watch. "Are we missing someone, Jessica?" "Not that I know of," she replied, equally puzzled. When Michael opened the door, Richard Bennett stood there, elegant in his tailored suit despite being in his 70s. "Good evening," he said. "I believe I'm expected." "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake," Michael began. "No mistake," I called out, my voice suddenly clear and strong, nothing like the fragile tone I'd been using. "I invited him." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to me. Michael stared, confusion evident on his face. Mom, do you know this man? Of course I do, I said, walking forward with confidence. This is Richard Bennett, my attorney for the past 30 years. Jessica hurried to Michael's side. I'm sorry, but we're in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner. Perhaps you could come back another time. Richard smiled politely. I'm afraid this matter can't wait. It concerns Mrs. Thompson's legal standing and assets, which I'm managing as her power of attorney. David said quickly, placing a protective arm around my shoulders. Mom's not well, as you can see. I shrugged off his arm and stood straight, meeting his gaze directly. Actually, Michael, I'm perfectly well, as confirmed by the neurological evaluation I underwent last week. The mask of concerned son slipped, revealing a flash of alarm. What evaluation? The facility can't authorize medical tests without my consent. They can when the patient is fully competent and requests them, Elizabeth interjected, stepping forward. Allow me to introduce myself properly. Elizabeth Carter, former district attorney for Cook County, specializing in elder fraud cases. A murmur rippled through the gathering of guests, who were now watching with undisguised interest. I think we should discuss this privately, Michael said through clenched teeth, glancing anxiously at his colleagues.
Why?
I asked innocently. Aren't these your friends and business associates? The people you want to impress with your beautiful home and successful life? Don't they deserve to know the truth about how you finance it all? Jessica gripped Michael's arm. Michael, what is she talking about? The caterer appeared in the dining room doorway. Dinner is served, she announced, then retreated quickly, sensing the tension. Perfect timing, I said. Let's all sit down. I have quite a story to tell over turkey. Despite Michael's obvious discomfort, social convention prevailed. No one wanted to be the first to leave what had become the most interesting Thanksgiving dinner in memory. We moved to the dining room, where a long table gleamed with Jessica's best china and silverware, some of which I recognized as pieces taken from my home. I took the seat at the end of the table opposite Michael, with Elizabeth and Richard flanking me. Emily quietly slipped into the chair beside Elizabeth, while Jessica sat rigidly next to Michael, her knuckles white around her water glass. After a painfully awkward blessing led by Stephen at Michael's request, serving began. I waited until everyone had food on their plates before speaking. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I began, my voice clear and steady. Especially since you're all witnesses to something important. Michael laughed nervously. Mom loves to be dramatic. It's part of her condition. My condition, I repeated, opening the portfolio I'd brought. Let's talk about that, shall we? Dr. Anika Patel, medical director at Silver Haven Retirement Community, supervised a complete neurological evaluation performed by Dr. James Harper, chief of neurology at Chicago General. I slid the report across the table. His conclusion, I show no signs of cognitive impairment, dementia, or any other condition affecting my mental capacity. Michael didn't touch the report. One doctor's opinion doesn't overrule Dr. Reynolds' diagnosis. The mysterious Dr. Reynolds, Richard interjected smoothly. We've been trying to locate him. Strangely, there's no record of a neurologist by that name licensed in Illinois. The guests exchanged glances. Stephen put down his fork, his attention fully captured. This is ridiculous, Jessica snapped. We're trying to enjoy Thanksgiving. So was I replied calmly, until my son and daughter-in-law abandoned me at a retirement home on my birthday, using falsified medical documents to seize control of my assets. A collective gasp rippled around the table. Michael's face flushed. That's not what happened. Mom needed specialized care. We were worried about her safety. Is that why you immediately began selling my jewelry? I asked, sliding several photos across the table, surveillance images from my home showing Jessica trying on my pieces, paired with photos of her wearing them in public. Or, why you listed my house for sale the very next day? Those pieces were gifted to me, Jessica protested. Eleanor wanted me to have them. I turned to the guests. Would any of you gift away family heirlooms without documentation, if you were in your right mind, especially pieces insured for over $100,000? more uncomfortable shifting in chairs. Michael's boss was now watching him with open suspicion. But here's what I find most interesting. I continued, producing another document. Michael isn't even my power of attorney. This document, which he presented to Silver Haven and my bank, is a forgery. Richard placed the genuine power of attorney beside it. Mrs. Thompson granted power of attorney to me 5 years ago after her husband's death. We renew it annually. The document Michael has been using contains discrepancies in both the notarization and my signature. Michael stood abruptly. This is all a misunderstanding. Mom's been confused, mixing things up like the fact that I own Silver Haven Retirement Community. I interrupted quietly. The room went completely silent. Michael stared at me, his face draining of color. What did you just say? He whispered. Silver Haven Retirement Community is owned by Thompson Properties LLC, along with 12 other commercial and residential properties throughout the Midwest, I said, smiling. I've been quite busy since your father died, Michael, building the real estate empire he and I always dreamed of. Jessica's hand flew to her throat. That's not possible. You're just a housewife. A housewife who worked in real estate for 40 years before retiring. I corrected her. A housewife who doubled as your father's business partner, I told Michael. Robert may have been the face of our investments, but I was always the one who found the properties, analyzed their potential, structured the deals. If that's true, Michael said, desperation creeping into his voice, why keep it secret from us, your family? Because of exactly what happened when you thought I had something valuable, I replied sadly. You tried to take it. Emily stood up suddenly. I can't listen to any more of this, she said, her voice shaking. Dad, you and Mom lied to me. You said Grandma couldn't take care of herself anymore. You said she needed to be in that place. Emily, you don't understand, Michael began. I understand perfectly, she cut him off. I found the papers in your office safe, the ones from the lawyer about declaring Grandma incompetent so you could access her accounts. There was even a draft agreement to sell her house to your golf buddy for below market value for a quick cash sale. Several guests were now openly staring at Michael with disgust. Stephen pushed his plate away, his appetite clearly gone. I think, Elizabeth said into the uncomfortable silence, this might be a good time to mention that Eleanor has already filed legal documents to invalidate the fraudulent power of attorney. The hearing is scheduled for Monday, and the police have been notified about the theft of Eleanor's jewelry. Charges? Jessica's voice rose to a near shriek. You'd press charges against your own son? I looked at her steadily. I'd rather not, which is why I'm offering an alternative. I nodded to Richard, who produced another document. This is a proposed settlement, I explained. In exchange for returning all my property, including my jewelry, house keys, and financial documents, and signing a statement acknowledging the fraudulent nature of your actions, I'll agree not to pursue criminal charges. You expect us to admit to fraud? Michael asked incredulously. I expect you to take responsibility, I replied. The statement won't be made public unless you attempt something like this again with me or anyone else. And if we refuse? Michael challenged, a hint of his old arrogance returning. Then on Monday, I'll ask the court to pursue this matter to the fullest extent of the law, I said simply. Elder fraud carries significant penalties in Illinois, including prison time. The room had grown so quiet you could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. Guests looked uncomfortable, caught in a family drama none of them had anticipated. I don't want that, Michael. I continued, my voice softer now. Despite everything, you're still my son. I'd rather see you learn from this than be punished for it. Michael sank back into his chair, defeat evident in every line of his body. Jessica stared straight ahead, tears streaming down her face, mascara leaving black tracks on her carefully made-up cheeks. Stephen cleared his throat. I think perhaps the rest of us should give the family some privacy to discuss these matters. He stood, prompting others to follow suit. Michael, I'll see you in my office first thing Monday morning. The implied threat was unmistakable as the guests filed out, murmuring awkward thanks and goodbyes. I remained seated, watching the life Michael and Jessica had so carefully constructed crumble around them. It brought me no joy, only a profound sadness that it had come to this. When the last guest had departed, Emily came to stand beside me, her hand on my shoulder. Elizabeth and Richard remained seated, silent guardians ensuring the confrontation remained civil. "What happens now?" Emily asked quietly. I looked at my son and daughter-in-law, these strangers who shared my blood and name. "That," I said, "is entirely up to them." I reached out to those watching my story unfold, my voice steady despite the emotion of the moment. For those who have followed my journey to this point, thank you for your support. Make sure you're subscribed and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, standing up for yourself means facing painful truths about those closest to you. As Michael and Jessica exchanged defeated glances, I knew the final chapter of this saga was still to be written. But for the first time since my birthday, I felt truly in control of my destiny again. The confused, helpless mother was gone. In her place sat the woman I had always been, strong, capable, and unwilling to be anyone's victim. The days following Thanksgiving unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Michael and Jessica, faced with the prospect of legal consequences and social ruin, signed the settlement agreement in Richard's office the very next morning. Their signatures trembled on the paper, their faces ashen as the full reality of their situation sank in. "All your jewelry will be returned by this afternoon," Michael said stiffly, unable to meet my eyes. "And we've withdrawn the house listing." "Thank you," I replied, my voice neither triumphant nor condemning. This wasn't about victory. It was about justice and moving forward. By Monday, the court had officially invalidated the fraudulent power of attorney and confirmed my competency. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, had glanced over her reading glasses at Michael. "You're fortunate your mother is more merciful than the state might have been," she told him. "Elder fraud is something this court takes extremely seriously." Now, 2 months later, I sat in Sarah Thompson's office at Silver Haven, no longer as a resident, but as the owner conducting our regular business meeting. The winter sun streamed through the window, casting long shadows across the carpet. "The new West Wing renovations are on schedule," Sarah reported, sliding a folder across the desk. "And occupancy rates are up 5% since last quarter." "Excellent," I nodded, reviewing the figures. "And how are our special residents doing?" Sarah smiled, understanding my meaning. "Elizabeth continues to mentor our community legal aid program. Judge Rogers has started a memoir writing class, and Helen is terrorizing everyone at poker night." I laughed, genuinely happy to hear about my friends. Though I'd moved back to my own home, I visited Silver Haven several times a week, continuing the friendships that had sustained me during my unexpected residency. "And what about the new program?" I asked, referring to the initiative closest to my heart, one born from my own experience. "The Eleanor Thompson Elder Advocacy Program is officially launching next month," Sarah confirmed. "We've already identified 3 residents who are experiencing financial pressure from family members. The legal team is stepping in to help them secure their assets and establish proper protections." Pride warmed me from within. Something good had come from my ordeal after all, a program to ensure other elderly individuals wouldn't face what I had. As we concluded our meeting, Sarah hesitated. "Michael called again yesterday, asking if you'd be here today." My heart gave a small, painful twist. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that I didn't know your schedule." She studied me carefully. "He's called every week for the past month." I nodded, gathering my belongings. "Thank you for letting me know." Outside, the January air was crisp and clear. I'd parked my car. Yes, I still drove, much to Michael's former consternation, near the main entrance. As I approached it, a familiar figure straightened from where he'd been leaning against the adjacent wall. "Mom," Michael said, his breath visible in the cold air. He looked different, thinner, less polished. The designer suit was gone, replaced by jeans and a simple wool coat. The Rolex was absent from his wrist. "Michael," I acknowledged, stopping a few feet away. "Sarah mentioned you've been calling." He nodded, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I wasn't sure you'd talk to me if I called directly." He wasn't wrong. Since Thanksgiving, Our communication had been limited to necessary legal matters conducted primarily through Richard. "How have you been?" I asked, unlocking my car but not getting in. Honest answer? Terrible. A rueful smile crossed his face. Stephen fired me the Monday after Thanksgiving. Most of my business contacts won't return my calls. We had to sell the house legitimately this time. Jessica and I are separated. She's staying with her sister in Michigan. I absorbed this information without comment. Actions had consequences. We both knew that. "Emily told me about your advocacy program," he continued when I didn't respond. "It's a good thing you're doing." "Thank you," I said simply. An awkward silence stretched between us, mother and son, connected by blood but separated by broken trust. "I've been seeing someone," Michael finally said. "A therapist trying to understand why he trailed off, then forced himself to continue. Why I was willing to hurt you for money. And have you found any answers?" He looked down at the pavement. None that excuse what I did. But I'm trying to understand the man I became, so I don't stay that person." He glanced up. "The therapist suggested I might have viewed Dad's money, what I thought was your money, as somehow already mine by right. An inheritance I was simply claiming early." "That's not how inheritance works," I pointed out. "And it certainly isn't how respect works." "I know that now." He sighed heavily. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mom. I don't deserve that yet, maybe never. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better." For the first time, I truly looked at my son beyond the anger and hurt of his betrayal. I saw shadows under his eyes, new lines on his face, but I also saw something that had been missing before: humility. "What are you doing for work?" I asked. "I'm managing a small property downtown, not as an owner, just an employee. The hours are long, the pay is modest, but it's honest work." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Turns out I did learn something useful from you and Dad after all." I nodded, processing this information. "And Emily?" His expression softened. "She's amazing, stronger than I ever gave her credit for. She's speaking to me again, barely. Says she'll consider forgiving me if I prove I've changed over time." Smart kid. "Yes," I agreed. "She takes after her grandmother." That earned a genuine, if brief, laugh from him. "Mom," he said, suddenly serious again, "I am so deeply sorry, not just for what I did, but for who I became. Someone who could look at his own mother and see only dollar signs." His voice cracked. "I don't know if we can ever repair what I broke. But I want you to know I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of being your son again." Something shifted inside me, not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps its distant cousin, an openness to possibility. "There's a diner around the corner," I said after a long moment. "They make decent coffee. If you have time, we could talk a bit more." The hope that flared in his eyes was almost painful to witness. "I'd like that very much." As we walked together toward the diner, a careful distance between us, I thought about the journey that had brought me here, from the shock of betrayal on my birthday to the triumph of Thanksgiving, and now to this tentative first step toward what? Reconciliation, understanding. I wasn't sure yet. What I did know was that I was no longer the victim in this story. I was its author. 3 months later, on a bright spring day, I celebrated my 73rd birthday, surrounded by friends in my garden. Elizabeth, Judge Rogers, Helen, and other allies from Silver Haven raised glasses of champagne as Emily brought out a cake blazing with candles. To Eleanor, Elizabeth toasted, who taught us all that age isn't about growing weaker, but growing wiser. As laughter and conversation flowed around me, I noticed Michael standing slightly apart from the group, watching with uncertain eyes. I'd invited him, a small step in a long process. He'd been attending weekly counseling sessions, volunteering at an elder care center as part of his amends, and slowly rebuilding his relationship with Emily. I made my way to him, 2 plates of cake in hand. "It's too nice a day to stand alone in the corner," I said, offering him a slice. He accepted it with a grateful smile. "Happy birthday, Mom. It's better than the last one." "Much," I agreed. "The new program at Silver Haven helped another resident last week," he told me, a woman whose nephew was pressuring her to add him to her accounts. Emily's been volunteering with the advocacy team. Pride swelled in my chest for the program that was my legacy and for my granddaughter, who understood its importance. I've been thinking, I said carefully, about the Thompson Properties portfolio. It's getting large enough that I could use some help with the administrative side, someone with property management experience. Michael stared at me, cake forgotten in his hand. Mom, you don't have to. This isn't forgiveness packaged as a job offer, I clarified. It's a business proposition. You have experience. You've demonstrated over the past 3 months that you're committed to change. And frankly, I'm not getting any younger, despite what that neurologist report might say. A complex mix of emotions crossed his face: gratitude, unworthiness, hope. I would never betray your trust again, he said quietly. Never. I know, I replied, because this time you'll be working with me, not behind my back. You'll learn the business properly from the ground up. I added with a small smile, and you'll be reporting to Emily, who's starting as my assistant this summer. He laughed, a genuine sound that reminded me of the boy he'd been. My daughter is my boss. That seems like poetic justice. I thought so, I agreed. As we rejoined the party, I found myself addressing my invisible audience one last time. For those who have followed my journey from that fateful birthday to today, thank you for your support. If this story has touched you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Remember to subscribe to see more stories of resilience and justice. Sometimes, the happiest endings aren't about perfect resolution, but about finding strength you never knew you had. Elizabeth caught my eye across the garden and raised an eyebrow. There you go again, talking to your invisible viewers. I smiled, serene in the knowledge that my story mattered, not just to me, but perhaps to others facing their own battles for dignity and respect. Just a habit, I replied. A reminder that our experiences don't exist in isolation, that speaking our truth can create ripples we never imagined. As the sun began to set on my birthday celebration, I looked around at the unlikely family I'd gathered, some related by blood, others by circumstance and choice. In betrayal, I'd found strength. In crisis, I'd found purpose. And in standing up for myself, I'd created something that would help others long after I was gone. The Eleanor Thompson who'd been abandoned at Silver Haven on her birthday no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who owned not just buildings, but her own story, and who was determined to ensure others could do the same. As I blew out the candles on my cake, I made just one wish: that every person, regardless of age, would find the courage to declare, as I had finally learned to do, I am still here. I still matter. And I am not done yet. The end.